in normal organic agriculture, where there are no pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, or whatever used, the major concern for toxicity are the heavy metals
Yes.
of lead, of cadmium, or the non-metals like arsenic, antimony. Those are of concern to biology because they are toxic, and they will, under normal circumstances, lead to certain diseases over a period of time, depending on your exposure, and people die. And they die of old age or a disease that's induced by something that was naturally occurring in the food that they ate. Too many heavy metals. Well, glyphosate and glufosinate are toxins that affect our biology from a different route, affect our lipids, affect our proteins, whatever. They still cause death. They still cause an early death. Glyphosate, on the other hand, accumulates heavy metals like cadmium and lead. That was part of some of my research that I did over the course of 3 years with corn. And I've shown that glyphosate increases the heavy metals cadmium and lead in our biology and in our tissues, in our food. And that's another reason why we should get rid of glyphosate.
So let me rephrase that and tell me if I'm saying it wrong. If you grow corn in a particular field with known quantities of this heavy metals, which is there everywhere, and plants do pick up normally a small quantity of it. So therefore, if you test the corn grown there organically, let's say, without any pesticides and all that, it will still contain a small amount of these heavy metals. And if the soil is without these heavy metals in another place, those corns will not have that much of heavy metal. This is normal situation. Now, if you are using glyphosate as a weed killer in those soils, in your experiment, you have found that even though the heavy metal percentage or quantity remains the same in the soil, you did not add to it, but the plant's physiology has somehow changed with the presence of glyphosate, and whereby these plants, apart from being laced with glyphosate, is also picking up more heavy metals than it would otherwise do if it was not affected by glyphosate. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what I found in 3 years of field trials with about 50 varieties of corn that were either sprayed with glyphosate or no glyphosate was used. Glyphosate increased the concentration of the heavy metals cadmium and lead in the food. And
in the same soil with the same quantity of lead and cadmium being there in the first place.
Yes, under the same exact conditions. No additional fertilizers, no additional micronutrients, just under normal growing conditions. The only change was some of the plants were treated with glyphosate, some weren't. And the ones that were treated with glyphosate had increased heavy metals. And that's disturbing because those heavy metals are toxic to our biology.
Okay. So this paper is out, and has the medical profession, or I don't know, anybody else, EPA, anybody alerted about this?
I haven't published the data from the field experiments. I'll include that in the new paper, just for those heavy metals.
Oh.
Because they relate to how glyphosate causes disease in our tissues.
Is there
especially when it comes to Alzheimer's disease? In Alzheimer's plaques, cadmium is found pretty heavily bioaccumulated. and also in the cataracts of people's eyes, cadmium is found bioaccumulated. And those plaques, the cataract plaques and the brain plaques, are the same material.
You mean that presence of cadmium is also linked to Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, in the Alzheimer's plaques and fibrillary tangles, there's a high percentage of cadmium in those plaques, and in cataracts. And the cataracts and brain plaques are exactly the same type of amyloid material. Exactly, they're identical. And Monsanto found the animals that were treated with glyphosate got cataracts. So we carry that to the brain. Glyphosate is causing Alzheimer's disease. It's causing the plaques and fibrillary tangles and the destruction of our neurology and our central nervous system, just the same as it causes the destruction of our peripheral nervous system.
I remember while studying nuclear energy and how power plants are, again, going back to school when I was 14, 15 years old, I understood that cadmium rods played a very important part because of this metal's ability to absorb a lot of neutrons, and therefore cadmium rods were lowered or raised from the bath to speed up or slow down the rate of nuclear reaction. Now, my question to you is, could cadmium's ability to absorb neutrons have something to do with Alzheimer's disease in the brain?
Sure.
So passage of neutrons is not only for nuclear energy, it also for passing information between brain cells, could be?
It could be definitely, it's definitely interfering with the electrochemistry of the brain.
Geez.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.